Hey everyone, George Christie here with Wine Industry Network. Welcome to another edition of the Wine Insider Series. As many of you know, this is an opportunity for us to interview different people who play different roles within our industry and learn a little bit more about them professionally as well as personally. And today we're really excited. We've got Karen MacNeil. Karen is the author of the Wine Bible, but more recently part of the group along with Gino Colangelo and Kimberly Noel Charles, who formed Come Together. And that's the organization behind Come Over October, our new initiative for the wine industry designed to encourage people to enjoy wine with their friends, enjoy wine responsibly. And it's something that's already had a tremendous amount of success, a tremendous amount of support. So we're going to learn a little bit more about Karen, and we're going to learn a little bit more about Come Over October. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, Karen, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you, George.
Thank you so much for coming to part two. As we said earlier, that this is the first time we ever had a part two, but we've never had a webinar that had so many people sign up and who submitted so many questions. And as I, mentioned to the gang earlier, even with a second segment like we're doing, we're still not thinking get to all the questions, but I think we're going to get to the most important ones. But before we get into it, I was thinking about you and what you've come up with here, and just looking at all the things you've done, right? So we all know about the Wine Bible, which the fact that it took you 10 years to put that together is just mind-boggling to me, like the level of commitment. And now you're on the third edition, so that's just crazy. Wine writer, creator, editor-in-chief for WineSpeed, right? I know that takes time. You've got Karen MacNeil and Company, so you're doing consulting. You've been involved with the Today Show, Wine, Food, and Friends, but now you find time to start Come Together and a whole nother initiative. It's like, I feel like I'm busy, but then I was like reading what you do and I'm like, I'm not that busy. I could be doing more. But I wanted to ask you, because I know there's been I've seen you on, other interviews where you talk a lot about some of the other things you've done, but I'm super curious about how did your wine career begin? Like, where did it all start?
Yeah. Well, first, I feel like, when you want to get something done, give it to a busy woman. Sorry, George. I know you, but your staff will know what I mean.
Yeah.
I started as a journalist in New York many years ago. And actually, I shouldn't say I started, because in those days before blogs, you couldn't just be a writer. You had to try and break into publishing. And in my case, I collected 324 rejection slips before my first article was before I sold my first article for $30 to the Village Voice. And that article was on butter because my bright idea at the time, I was pretty poor. I was on food stamps. And my bright idea was, if I started writing about food, maybe people would give me samples and it would be a better way to, it would improve my diet in a way. And it was true. People did give you samples, and I did start eating better. But so I became, over the next few years, a pretty successful food writer. I was writing for New York Times Magazine. I published a book on food by Random House. But I realized in all of this that what I really loved was the whole world of gastronomy, which of course includes the four big beverages of history and the four big beverages of civilization are coffee, tea, beer, and wine. And coffee, tea, and beer, you can kind of teach yourself by a lot of reading and research. But wine was hard, right? Because first of all, what was written back then about wine was often really dry and impenetrable. I can remember thinking to myself, Meursault, Macon, Montagny, what are these places inside places? Yeah. Are these grape varieties? It's hard to teach yourself about wine, and you had to taste it. And I can promise you that you can't buy wine when you're on food stamps. It's actually illegal. So anyway, I eventually managed to talk a friend of mine who was also a journalist into asking a group of other journalists. These were all men in New York. At that time, they kind of controlled everything that was being written about wine in the whole country. And my friend convinced the others to let me come to the tastings that they were doing every week. And, you know, people, the Bordeaux would be flying in, Chianti Classico, the port producers on Thursday. I mean, it was unbelievable, right? And they let me join them on one condition, which was that I not talk. And I didn't talk for like about 5 or 6 years. I tasted at least once a week with these guys. And, you know, by the way, I didn't want to offer my opinion. As far as I was concerned, I didn't have a right to an opinion yet. I didn't know enough to have an opinion, but I wanted to ask questions, right? I had 1,000 questions because wine is a little complicated to teach yourself. So the final word about this is that there's a happy ending, because I remembered so painfully, in a way, what it felt like to be so confused by wine, that all of the questions I had became the basis for the Wine Bible, which became one of the, if not the best-selling wine book in the United States. So happy ending.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I think, so I did not grow up drinking wine in a household where wine was the thing. And I wound up in Northern California and just loved it here. And that's how I wound up, you know, getting into wine. And I felt, as you were speaking, I could get a sense for how you must have felt, because it is overwhelming. It was overwhelming. And I didn't even know sometimes, I think in the beginning, what the right questions to ask were. But I also felt like as my career progressed, you know, first half of my career just purely on the winery side, and now doing what I do, which is kind of on the B2B side of our industry, it actually turned out to be a good thing, because I had more in common with the regular Joe, you know, or Jill, or however you want to phrase it out there, because most people also grew up in a household that wasn't wine on the table every day. And I think it actually helped me, even though in the very beginning, I was just, it was scary.
It's actually a little bit good that when you're a beginner, you don't realize how complicated the topic is, because you really would stop. You would be like, oh, no, can't do this.
Yeah, it's so fun. I remember like subscribing to Wine Spectator, you know, very early in my career, and trying to like read every article and go through all of the scoring at the, you know, in the back of the book. And I just couldn't, you know. I remember telling myself, okay, you know what, stop, just focus on California for now, and we'll start there, because you just can't do it. So I take it that you must have looked forward to those tastings every week. You must have, the wine bug bit you. And
and nobody, of course, you know, we've all heard that phrase of to be bitten by the wine bug. Nobody ever says, I'm unbitten, you know, I'm done, I don't care anymore. It's one of the more amazing aspects of wine, that you just fall deeper and deeper and deeper in love with it. And once you're on that gerbil wheel, you don't ever get off. You just love it. And certainly that's what happened with me. And, you know, I will say, in defense of the men that I tasted with, I am thankful to them, because I also watched how serious they were about wine. And they were very serious. And I learned to pay attention by watching how deeply they paid attention. So it was a good thing, really. I modeled my behavior, in a sense, after theirs. And I was serious and studious. I didn't take going to a tasting lightly. In those days in New York, you really paid attention. There was no like socializing.
Well, it sounds like as you're describing it, like you're going through like an apprenticeship, right? So like you can come, but you can't speak for 5 years, and then you can ask a question here or something. Yeah, it's a funny thing. I guess we all have our own journey, but I'm totally on board with what you said. It's like once you get to that certain point, you realize you never stop learning, you never stop exploring, and it's fun. it can be fun too.
Totally fun.
All right, we're gonna get into what we have you back here for. So, as I said earlier, like I don't know, you're just one of those people. Obviously, like you see something needs to be done, you just do it. So, talk a little bit about how Come Together came together.
Yeah. Well, Come Together, Community for Wine, is a company that Gino Colangelo, Kimberly Charles, and I formed in this past March, 2024. It's sort of a mission-driven company. We take no salaries. Our goal is to, through events and media, to tell the positive story about wine historically and culturally. And so our first campaign happens in a few weeks here, called, actually less than a few weeks, called Come Over October. And this will be an annual event. It's already hugely, we could never have imagined how successful this initiative has been. I think in part because it's so true that every wine drinker, I think, in the world has had the experience of meeting someone who's a stranger, having some wine with them, and that person is now your friend.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a simple but powerful fact. And so Come Over October is also very simple but powerful. It's the idea that during the month, we're asking wine drinkers everywhere to invite a friend, a colleague, a family member, a neighbor, to just come over to share some wine. Because we know that in the process of doing that, we are our best selves, right? We deepen friendships that way. We extend friendships that way. And that idea of coming together personally, in person, sharing some wine, resonates whether you're 23 or 63.
Yeah. Now you came up with Come Over October, right? So what were you doing? How did it come to you? I'm super
Yeah.
curious about that.
Well, in this past spring, I was increasingly despondent about, as a journalist myself, I of course read all the news, and I was just so unhappy that, first of all, that the conversation, the narrative around wine had devolved to just being a conversation about alcohol. And, if all it is alcohol, man, there are cheaper and faster ways than having a glass of Pinot Noir or Cabernet with dinner, right? So I know as a researcher that wine is threaded into this very rich tapestry of history, culture, art, religion. It's more than just alcohol. So that was making me kind of unhappy.
Yeah.
And also I kept thinking, why isn't the wine industry telling its own positive story more forcefully or even at all? So one morning I was walking the dog and I was grumbling to myself, how come nobody's telling the positive story about wine? And then I just said to myself, you're a word person. You should tell the story. And so, having turned the binoculars around on myself, I thought, all right, well, I'll write an article. And then I realized one article isn't enough. We really need some action here, because it seemed to me that the whole wine industry was in a state of inaction. No one knew what to do. And I thought, what if just every wine drinker in the whole country invited someone to come over in October? And I liked the rhyme of that, Come Over October. A writer would like that, What if they did that? What if everybody did that? That would be true to what we know about wine, which is that it's been a positive cultural force in society and in history.
Yeah, I loved it the first time I heard it, because it was an idea that no matter where you played in the industry, you could get behind it. You could be a part of it, right? Whether you're, a winery who's going to do something special in October, a retailer, I got a call, I mentioned this earlier, with the other panelists. The day that we did the broadcast, I got a call from Steve Fredericks, president of Turrentine Wine Brokerage, said, "This is great. How can we support this? I mean, this is fantastic." And I started to think, like, has there been anything else like that where no matter where you were, this was something you could get behind. This is something you could participate in. This is something you could support in your own way, associations. And I couldn't think of anything. So I think it's brilliant. And Gino talked a little bit about how much support that you've gotten already. Have you gotten some things that you're like, I can't believe it, these guys are even on board?
Yes. I mean, I have to say that when the rideshare company Lyft told us that they would be our official rideshare company and be a patron, I mean, I thought, oh my God, thank you.
Yeah.
I felt that way about Southern Glazer's wine and spirit wine company, distributing company.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm falling over my words
That's
there.
okay.
But Southern, as we all know it to be, they are a very big fish. And they call the most amazing thing, George, is that I guess I called Lyft, but all of the other supporters, people have been calling us.
Yeah.
Constellation, Jackson Family Wines, Trinchero, I mean, National Association of Wine Retailers, wine.com, Total Wine and more. I've never in my life had, the phone ring so often with people saying, we want to do this. Tell us how, tell us when, tell us what you need. And so people have been also saying, let me give you $5,000, let me give you $10,000. And we're taking that money, as I mentioned, we are all pro bono, Kimberly, Gino, and I, but we're just plowing those dollars back into even bigger and bigger events for come over October. And we are planning already a spring campaign as well. And in just later today, in fact, we'll be talking to the Congressional Wine Caucus, who Congress invited us to come and talk about come over October. And the international support has been astounding.
Yeah.
The Champagne Bureau, Wines of South Africa, Wines of Australia, Wines of New Zealand, Wines of Chile, the Chianti Classico Consortium, the Prosecco Consortium, all of these entities have called us to say, we want to do this in our country.
What's, I think, so cool about it. This is, aside from the whole wine, the wine industry stuff, is, you're journalist, but you're an entrepreneur as well, right? And as an entrepreneur, I've had a few good ideas and I'm always going, oh, is that my last best idea? And I like, you must be like, oh my God, this might be one of my best ideas I've had yet.
I'm feeling pretty good about it. Yeah, I like, before the Wine Bible, there was no book written like the Wine Bible. And actually, before I created the wine curriculum for the CIA out here in Napa Valley, there was nothing like that. There was no come over October. And I guess I think of myself as a pretty strong creative content person. And I like the feeling of this something, there's a germ of an idea here and nobody's done it. Let me really create it. So
Yeah.
I love that. I love going from zero to
Well,
to
something that,
see.
like just was in here and now it's everywhere, right? So congratulations on that. I just think that is so cool. All right. Couple of other questions for you, because I know you're busy. Is there anything else like this? Are there other initiatives like this outside the United States that you're aware of that is grabbing your, or even I mean, I know there's some other ones inside the United States, nothing quite like this, but I was curious if you've come across anything internationally along the same lines.
I have not. There's certainly a lot of the opposite is true. There's a lot of there are international organizations in Europe, in London, in Sweden that are very anti-wine and anti-alcohol in general. But and in the United States, you know, the efforts to tell a positive story about wine, there are several. Napa Valley Vintners has their Why Wine campaign. Wine Market Council has their Wine Is ... campaign. Of course, the Wine Institute is at work on a big campaign that we think will be released either at the end of this year or early next year. I don't have the details on that, but I know I was just talking to Bobby, who is the chief executive, yesterday, and he told me that they're gas pedal to the floor creating a campaign. And we need all of them, right? All of them, because the wine industry that we love needs help right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think kind of back to your idea, which is, it sounds like it's grabbing an international gear anyway, right? You're hearing from these other regions. It's something, like I said earlier, something that anyone can get involved in, and there's nothing intimidating about it, right? It's just about an excuse to get together, to enjoy a glass of wine. And I'm super curious about, I mean, we haven't even gotten to year one. I started thinking about what's this going to be like in year 3 or 4 or 5. I mean, it's going to be massive.
You know, we did a calculation a couple of days ago of the reach of Come Over October. As of the second week in September, we estimate that 508 million people now know about this campaign.
Amazing.
That's through press, advertising, which has been given to us about $60,000 in free, contributed ad space.
Yeah.
So press, articles, social media, that's where in 6 weeks to have that kind of traction is, you're on the right side of an issue when that happens.
It's unprecedented. I mean, we get, with our wine industry advisor, we get, press releases, and we get a press release every couple of days about another winery that's doing something with Come Over October, which is a good segue to the last question I wanted to ask you is, how can wineries and or winery associations be involved with Come Over October?
Yeah. One of the reasons that I think the idea has spread so magnificently so quickly is that every winery and every wine association is doing things, doing whatever makes sense for them a little bit differently, but they're all using our Come Over October logo, which is trademarked and which is free and available for use on the Come Over October website. And also there are posters that you can download and use, table tents, all kinds of things. So wineries are holding special Come Over October events. They are putting together packages for their wine club members that are special Come Over October wine packs with a little note card in that says, hey, invite some friends over. It's Come Over October month. Associations are doing things like creating wine routes. So during the month of October, we have, let's say, 40 wineries in our AVA. Come and tour them all. They're all doing open houses for Come Over October. And some places have been quite charming about their ideas, like Texas. The entire state of Texas is doing a Come Over October y'all campaign. So, the sky is the limit. We also know that many wineries are encouraging their employees. They're going to be doing Come Over October events for their employees. And of course, you can come over to someone's home, you can come over to a winery, you can come over to a restaurant or a hotel. There's just an endless number of ways to pay, in a sense, homage to wine's historic positive role. And you don't have to throw a party. It can be just having dinner with a friend
Yeah.
But maybe a dinner every single night.
Yeah,
It's
31
easy.
days. You
It
got
is a
31
month
days.
long though. Yeah,
Is it comeoveroctober.com?
it is. It's yep, www.comeoveroctober.com. And it's super helpful in spreading the word for people to use the hashtag at comeoveroctober. I guess that's not a hashtag, but to use the social media at comeoveroctober.
Perfect. Well, Karen, thank you so much. Congratulations again on coming up with the best idea that I've heard for our industry, I think ever. I mean, it's just fantastic. I wish you all the success. This is so good for our industry. And like I said earlier, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens this October and October's going forward, right? Because this is a great thing. Comeoveroctober.com. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for watching today, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, George.